What is going on, New York Knicks fans? Today, I wanted to talk about my expectations for the 2019-2020 season for this basketball team. And I actually have pretty high hopes for this team. Now, I don't necessarily think they're going to make the playoffs, but we're going to get into it in this video. Of course, the Knicks last year, they're coming off one of the worst seasons in franchise history. And they have not been a good basketball team since the last time they made the playoffs, 2012, 2013, a year in which they won 54 games, and the Knicks gave us a magical year, a year in which we went into the year with not near those high of expectations. Everything just kind of clicked that year. Carmelo Anthony won the scoring title. Tyson Chandler played amazing on the defensive end. J.R. Smith was great off the bench. Jason Kidd was that great guy, that great veteran presence we brought in. Other players as well. Steve Novak. That team just gelled. And I think this team could gel. Not 54 wins gel, but I think they have the makings of a team that could have good chemistry because I think they have a very good balance of veterans and younger players via the draft. And we're going to get into all of it in this video. But I think we need to temper our expectations a little bit if we think this team's going to do, damage in the playoffs or even potentially make the playoffs. When you go back and look at the course of history, there has not been a team since the 2014-2015 season that finished below 500 that got that 8 seed. That was the Brooklyn Nets. Since then, it's required at least 41 wins. And do I think this team could win 41 games? I think everything would have to break right. Vegas has us as 27.5 in the over-under for a reason. That would be outproducing that mark by 14 games. And I think that's asking a lot. Now, do I think that this team could play competitive basketball late into the season? Yeah, I absolutely think that. And I don't think 35 wins, 36 wins is out of the question. I think that they brought in a lot of guys that know their roles. When you look at the free agents they brought in, before we even talk about what they did in the draft, Bobby Portis, a guy that knows his role. He knows what he's good at. The guy shot an efficient 40% from distance. He's a stretch 4 or 5, whatever you want to say, at 6'11", averaged 14 points, 8 rebounds, and did it efficiently. And he's coming in here with the mindset of, I want to win 6th Man of the Year. And you really like hearing that. A guy that knows his role. Something that we didn't have last year. We had a bunch of reclamation projects last year. Guys that had talent, right? They were top 10 picks for a reason, whether it be Trey Burke, Emmanuel Mudiay, Noah Vonleh. Guys like that, Mario Hezonja, who didn't really know what they were good at, right? They had gifts. They had physical traits, gifts, but they didn't really know how to hone it. These guys, these veterans know what they're good at, and they're going to play a vital part for this team. We mentioned Portis, Reggie Bullock, same thing. Bullock's going to miss some of the season due to his injury, but when he's on the floor, he's a 3-and-D player, and he does it efficiently. He knows he's good at shooting the three. He's a very good free throw shooter. He shot 86% last year, I believe, and he's going to hit you 2 threes a game. That's what he's good at. Julius Randle needs to work on his defense, but offensively he's going to be this team's leading scorer. He averaged damn near 22 points a game last year, and he developed that outside shot as well. He shot 34%, but before that he never was able to really be a guy that could knock down a 3, and last year he added that to his game, and I expect him to continue to build off of that. Wayne Ellington, much like Reggie Bullock, a veteran who knows what he's good at, a 3-and-D player who's going to bring a nice punch off the bench. Taj Gibson, a guy that knows his role. Very good rebounder, a tough, gritty player. He's probably not going to play more than 15 to 18 minutes a game, but I like him. Marcus Morris, one of the better players on this team and a very underrated signing. A great two-way player who could play both the 3 and the 4, could stretch the floor by shooting the 3. Just a very good player, and he's bringing a winning pedigree in from the Boston Celtics. So I really like these free agent acquisitions, and it's certainly going to up this team's win total. It's almost impossible not to. The team won 17 games last year, but I think this team at least 30 wins this year with the talent that they have on the roster. And that's before you even factor in what we hope is a big step forward for the guys we drafted last year, being Kevin Knox and Mitchell Robinson. Kevin Knox last year, if we're being fair, was disappointing. I think he shot 37% from the field, 38 maybe. He was underwhelming. But a lot of it had to do with the fact that there were no parts around him. By the way, I don't even think I mentioned Elfrid Payton, who I really like. He's a guy that if he is good at anything, it is setting players up. He's a very good pass-first point guard, and you hope that could translate to Dennis Smith Jr., another young star on this roster who I think has a load of potential if he could find out what his best qualities are, and he can emphasize that. Dennis Smith Jr. is going to be a guy that attacks the rim, but I think he's a pretty good passer, and I think he needs to work on that this year, and a guy like Elfrid Payton is going to help him do that. Payton's also going to be very good at finding these players that are good at three-point shots in the right spots. So I think the Knicks will be much more efficient on the offensive end. And I think Knox will progress because of that, because of the guys around him. I think he's going to have a better year. Last year, he was the guy, especially after we traded Tim Hardaway Jr. Mitchell Robinson, I expect to lead the league in blocks. He was second in the league last year when he averaged only 20 minutes a game. He's a terror, in terms of being a shot blocker. And I think he could average a double-double this year if he gets the proper minutes. So, I mean, Mitch, you're getting a great guy. He's going to be a great player. He really is. He's just got to worry about foul trouble. But I think both Mitch and Knox take a step forward this year. And I think RJ Barret has something to bring to the table. Now, will he struggle somewhat? Yeah, of course. Most rookies do. He's still very young. But I think he's going to add a lot to this team. And I think he's going to be a superstar somewhere down the line, 3-4 years from now. So I really like the makeup of this team. The other thing, when you look into the numbers, what the Knicks did, I mean, to me, the thing they did more than anything else was they brought in guys that could knock it down from three. And when you look at the teams that made the playoffs last year, 14 of the top 17 teams in terms of efficiency from shooting the three made the playoffs. That's 14 of the 16 playoff teams were in the top 17 in three-point efficiency. It's a new league. You have to be able to shoot the three, and you have to be able to shoot it well. Well, last year, the Knicks couldn't do that. They ranked 24th in the league in three-pointers made, and they ranked 28th in three-point percentage. They were damn near the bottom of the league. I mean, as bad as it gets. They shot 34% as a team. When you look at the guys they brought in via free agency, Wayne Ellington is a career 38% shooter from three. Marcus Morris last year is a career 36% shooter, and last year shot 37%. Reggie Bullock is a career 39% shooter from three, and Bobby Portis shot 39% last year and is a career 36% shooter. All of those guys are well above last year's percentage, and they're going to help that three-point efficiency, making this a much more balanced offense. So, and not to mention Elfrid Payton, I think, is a much more improved pass-first point guard than what they had on last year's roster. So I expect this offense to be much more efficient, and I think they're going to be able to shoot the three at a good clip. They're also going to be a better free throw shooting team. RJ Barret needs to work on that. But that is going to, the one concern I have for this year's team in terms of progression is the balance. How the coach, or Fizdale, is going to balance these minutes. How is he going to distribute the minutes between the veterans and the young pups? I mean, that's what it's going to come down to, because you have a lot of guys on this team on one-year contracts that are on prove-it deals that are going to hit the market next year potentially and want to be able to put up their numbers. They're also going to have to split time, though, and have to do it in an unselfish way with these guys that we know need to improve. Even a guy like a Frank Ntilikina, a guy like a Dotson, a guy like a Trier, those guys need to get their minutes to get better as NBA players. So that will be Fizdale's biggest challenge. Balancing the minutes between those guys, the RJ Barretts, the Robinsons, the Knoxes, and the veterans, the Julius Randles, the Bullocks, the Portis, the Ellingtons. That will be his challenge. But I think there is a harmony on this team. I think there is a good balance of veterans and rookies or young players on rookie deals. And that's a good thing. That's what you want to see on your NBA roster. And I think the team's only going to get younger next year when they have probably another pretty good first-round draft pick, and the Knicks are going to continue to build through the youth movement. But for this year's team, I'm going to say 34 or 35 wins. I don't expect them to make the playoffs because when you look at the history, it requires a 500 team for the most part to make the playoffs. Now, the East did get weaker. There are four powerhouses in the East: the Boston Celtics, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Indiana Pacers, as far as I'm concerned. The Raptors obviously take a big step down with Kawhi Leonard out. The Nets next year will be a powerhouse. This year without Durant, I expect them to be right around the same, maybe a little bit better. Kyrie Irving is great, but they lost D'Angelo Russell, who was very good for them as well. They also added DeAndre Jordan. So, yeah, the Nets will probably be a little bit better, and I think they'll make the playoffs. The Magic could take a step back. We'll see. They didn't really add much to their roster. They kind of just kept it intact. Last year, they were a surprise team that got the 8th seed. But I think there's room for the Knicks to beat up on some of these poor teams in the East, whether it be the Cavs, teams like that. And maybe they could sneak in. But realistically speaking, if I had to tell you, no. I think they'll be in the low to mid-30s in wins, and I think they're going to progress. I mean, if they did that, they'd be doubling their win total from last year. So I think you got to be happy with that. All I want from this team this year is to see progression from the young players and to have this team play competitive basketball on a night-in, night-out basis. I want them to be in the playoff race down the stretch because I think you can learn a lot from that if you're a young basketball player. I think that will be a very valuable tool for these players to learn if they learn how to compete in close games. We need to stop this losing culture. I know people are going to say continue to tank, continue to get top 3-4 picks. It needs to end at some point, and I hope it ends this year. I hope this team at least competes and grows as a franchise. But we're just going to have to wait and see. I cannot wait for the season to get started. I'd like to get your guys' thoughts in the comments below. What do you expect from this team in terms of win total? Where do you think this team could potentially be this year and maybe in 2 or 3 years from now? As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.